Hoy reaccionaré a un video de este canal YouTube Spain Unfiltered. 3000 villages, ¿cómo se traduce? Como, qué sé yo, como municipalidades o algo así de España que son inhabitadas. ¡Qué locura! Voy a ver la España vacía. Madre mía, nunca podré trabajar como traductor, pero chupa huevo. Me suda la polla realmente. Entonces vamos a ver este video enseguida.
We hear a lot of talk about Spain's overheating cities, tourism, traffic and overcrowding. But there's another Spain, and it's moving in the opposite direction. To find out more about abandoned Spain, I drove deep into a region that rarely sees outsiders. And what I thought would be a story about economics turned into something
Este problema es muy intenso también en Portugal.
unexpectedly human. I discovered a story that begins with a dictator and decades of rural decline and ends with a lesson that reaches far beyond these empty valleys, back to every community, abandoned or not. Spain's depopulation crisis didn't start by accident. In the 1940s, Franco was still consolidating power. Armed anti-Franco guerrillas operated from Spain's remote mountain regions where state control was weakest. While there was no single national policy of forced depopulation, the region increasingly favoured concentrating people into towns and cities. The result was a countryside that became easy to monitor and gradually emptied. By the 1950s, Spain entered a phase of economic revival. As the Mediterranean coast was being reimagined as a future tourism magnet, the interior became the canvas for Franco's industrial vision. Massive state-funded dam projects promised water management and cheap hydroelectric power. Extremadura, home to the Tejo and Guadiana rivers, was a prime target. Today, the region is dotted with reservoirs, peaceful and beautiful, but hiding the remains of entire communities which were forcefully uprooted. On the banks of the Gabriel and Galan Reservoir, the walled village of Granadilla still stands, evacuated to make way for water that never actually reached it. Even today, the descendants of the former residents are not allowed to return. But forced relocations like Granadilla were the tip of the iceberg. As resources were directed towards cities and infrastructure and transportation links centred around them, urban economies grew quickly, while rural economies fell behind. A wealth gap was seeded that for decade after decade has only grown wider. So back in June, I drove through Extremadura with an old friend. As we explored town after town, a pattern became impossible to ignore. Streets that should have been bustling in the mid-morning were quiet. Shops were shuttered, and almost everybody we saw was elderly. We ended that trip just as the summer heatwave arrived, but what I had seen had sparked my interest. Depopulation was pushing Extremadura to the edge, but there are areas of Spain that had already been pushed over the edge. I wanted to see España vacía. So in October, I set off again, this time following the coast north past Alicante, past Benidorm, before turning inland towards the mountains that divide Valencia from Aragon. The further I drove, the quieter everything became. And then, right on the border, the road simply changed. Smooth tarmac turned into a rough cinder track, twisting deeper into the hills. It felt like crossing an invisible line between the Spain that most people know and a Spain that's slowly slipping from living memory. I was heading for La Estrella, a tiny village on the edge of Aragon that I'd heard about for years, but even with maps, GPS and planning, I still managed to get completely lost. After doubling back through the valley and skirting round to the other side of the mountains, I finally found the right track, and I arrived in La Estrella 4 hours later than I scheduled. After wandering around a little, I filmed a short piece to camera, and, well, honestly, it captures my reaction better than anything I could script.
I'm kind of lost for words for this place, you know. I've travelled a long time to get here because I looked online, I'd heard about the place. It became quite a famous kind of YouTube destination amongst the Spanish kind of YouTube community. But it's not quite what I expected. I expected a typical rundown, abandoned Spanish village with kind of, you know, collapsing properties and this, that and the other. But to come here, it's not just some poor little agricultural village which went wrong. I mean, the church behind me is absolutely gorgeous. There's an incredible villa which looks like it was built in the 18th century. It's a really beautiful, wonderful place to be, and it's quite scary
Madre
that it
mía.
can be so quiet.
Espera.
Quite scary that it
Al famoso torero Siluino Safont Colomer, Niño de la Estrella. La Estrella Orange Mosqueruela 1908-1963, Francia, homenaje 25 de mayo de
can be
1980.
so quiet. You know, it's quite eerie to be here and to think, you know, this used to be a thriving little square. There've been people from all around the area coming to church in the morning.
Madre mía, ese es el lugar perfecto en el verano cuando te mueres de calor y vas acá y es muy tranquilo. Me imagino también que no va a ser demasiado caliente, ¿no?
And yet now there's a couple of people around who are doing some work on houses, which I assume they're going to have as weekend houses. And it's good to see that there's some solar panels on top of some of the roofs I've noticed and a satellite dish here and there. So there obviously are some of the properties being used for weekends and the like, but it is a ghost town.
What makes La Estrella even more striking is how recent this abandonment really is. Until about a year ago, two people still lived here, Sinforosa and Martin, an elderly couple who'd been the last permanent residents for 30 years.
Oh,
They even became quite famous, featuring in a Land Rover commercial, but in their 80s, with declining health, they had no choice but to leave. Martin's old Land Rover still sits where he parked it, a quiet reminder that life here wasn't ancient or distant. It was happening until very recently. But as haunting and as beautiful as this place is, I can understand why nobody lives here now. La Estrella isn't just remote, it's inaccessible. The road I took wasn't a scenic back route, it was the route. There are no shops, no school, no doctor, no public transport. Buying groceries would mean hours of driving. Seeing a doctor would take an entire day.
qué locura.
In winter, with snow on these tracks, and it does snow here, access would be impossible. So life here might seem romantic, but it would be hard. Estrella and the remote villages like it ask for more than most people can give. In the vast mountainous landscapes of Spain, is it even reasonable to expect that villages like this would survive in the modern world? In the morning, I set off even deeper into the most sparsely populated region of Spain. I'd been invited to a village called Sarnago, where I'd heard that they were taking a very modern approach to keeping their community on the map. My route took me through Aragon, past Zaragoza and deep into Castilla y Leon. As I let the video give you an idea of the scale of these open spaces, I want to say a big thank you for the response to my last video, especially if you're one of the thousands who subscribed or left a comment. I started off trying to respond.
Madre mía, qué locura. No hay ni un coche en vista. Es una locura.
Especially if you're one
Madre
of the thousands
mía.
who subscribed or left a comment. I started off trying to respond to everybody, then just trying to read them all, but it becomes
Creo que en el centro de Italia han lugares así que son un poquito despoblados. Acá en el norte no puedo imaginarme ni uno, la verdad. Yo vivo en una ciudad que hay muchas municipalidades que tienen como 100 hasta 500 personas en media, pero despobladas así, bueno, siempre hay gente en todos los lugares.
It's really hard to keep track of what I have and haven't seen, and well, that's a real shame because many of those comments were long, thoughtful, and deserved my response. So I've set up a member space for people who want to go that
Oh.
bit deeper. You'll get early access to new videos. I'll post videos discussing the points that came
Madre mía, mira esta calle.
up in comments. I'll share footage that doesn't make the final cut and some of my
Wow.
research, like this route, for example. I'd love to meet you there, so please do follow the QR code that's up now or the link in the description if it's something you think you'd like to be part of. Anyway, back to the story. By the time I arrived in Sarnago, it was gone midday. I've been invited to visit on this particular day because something special was happening. Marcos was waiting for me when I arrived. He's an architect and responsible for the design of Sarnago's co-living space. He gave me a tour of the village. We started at the old communal laundry, which is now being converted into an open-air library. Then the ruined church, where Marcos told me that his uncle had narrowly been missed when the bell fell from the tower. Today it's been preserved in the village museum, not as a relic, but as part of a story that's still being told. They hope that one day they'll be able to return it to its rightful position. Then Marcos took me to see their flagship project, a co-living space designed by him and being built by the Amigos de Sarnago, the group of former residents and their descendants who've looked after this village since 1980.
The ground floor is a huge space, a social area with restaurant, small bar, and a big social area to work or co-working. And in the second floor, hostel with small rooms with pumps and a social area with kitchen and living room. And we are.
Madre mía, me encantaría viajar y descubrir estos lugares en España. Es muy triste, claro, pero muy interesante.
Digital nomads, or for example, companies that want to do some team building, they come here, live, work, do some activities in this environment like bike, trekking, cycling, running, trail, what they want.
And then he introduced me to a word that I've never heard before.
Hacenderas.
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 Hacenderas. I think it's not a word in English.
No.
It's like we are from Sarnago and we say, okay, the 3rd of October, we come back to Sarnago this weekend and we work.
And people have to come from a long way away, I assume.
Yeah, of course. It's mainly from this close area. It's like Soria, Logroño, Tudela, Pamplona, Zaragoza is 2 hours away, mostly. As for example, people from the south, people from Barcelona, people from Galicia. The plan is we start working at 8, we stop at 10 to get some food, lunch, and now at 2 or 3 we get the lunch.
Very hard work, though. It looks like
The
hard
morning
work.
is hard work. And of course there are people here working, but there are a lot of people in the kitchen doing the lunch, doing a lot of things, or if not in the other part of the Sarnago, cutting the grass. Or
Of course. So there's maintenance that
The
needs doing as
maintenance.
well
Wow.
as was,
This from
Muy
was a
interesante.
Hacenderas, but it's really typical in this zona. It's not just Sarnago thing. We didn't invent it.
No.
It's from there. They have a lot of names, but it's always say we live here. We want it to be good. So just work.
Brilliant. It's a proper community spirit, we'd say in England, but it's not something you see in big towns.
No,
only
no.
in small places.
The co-working hub that they're building is being funded entirely by donations. Marcos couldn't tell me when it would be finished. They started 4 years ago. It may take many more, but, well, somehow that didn't seem to matter. Then we went to see some more of the work that the community had already completed. Marcos showed me the old school building, now a communal space and museum. The walls were covered in photographs, former residents, school children, teachers, faces frozen in time, but not forgotten. Upstairs, the village museum told yet another story. Fiestas that had been revived after years of silence. Traditional dress, unique to the area with...
Este es uno de los museos más interesantes, por supuesto. Madre mía, me
Sarnago's
encanta.
own colours, still used in village fiestas, which are believed to date back nearly 2,000 years to the Celtic origins of this region, the Serrania Celtibérica. Everyday objects showed just how hard and simple life here once was. A reminder that this was never an easy place to live, even in its prime. That afternoon, I was invited to join everybody for lunch. A meat stew cooked slowly over an open fire, served in generous portions with equally generous helpings of local wine and cider. As the
Dios.
village settled into a quiet afternoon calm, I had a wander around. The last permanent residents here had died in 1979, over 45 years before Sinforosa and Martin had left La Estrella. And yet, despite the ruined buildings, in stark contrast to Estrella's villas and church, even in the silence of siesta time, the atmosphere in Sarnago felt totally different. And it wasn't until the next day that I really understood why. Now, before I move on,
Mira,
I'd like to say a
gatito.
huge thank you to Marcos, Jose Marie, and everybody who made me so welcome in Sarnago. There is much more info about Sarnago in the members area, including the full interview and tour of the village with Marcos and loads of footage that it pained me to leave out. If you'd like to help support their project or pay them a visit, there's a link in the description below explaining just how you can do that. The next morning, after saying my goodbyes, I headed deeper into the surrounding mountains. There were 2 more abandoned villages I wanted to see. I had no map, I'd just been pointed in the rough direction, and well, when I finally found those villages, I understood something that I hadn't before. Until then, I hadn't really seen true abandonment. In Extremadura, there were still people living their lives. In La Estrella, the preserved church, Martin's Land Rover, cats, and recent memories in the air, even if it was tinged with sadness. In Sarnago, there was constant return, cherished history, and a clear vision of the future. But here, buildings had collapsed completely. Paths were overgrown. There was no sign that anybody other than hikers had set foot here for years, but electrical fittings still clung to the walls, a sign that these villages had been alive not so long ago. My trip through Extremadura in the summer had shown me that structural investment is needed to reverse that region's fortunes, and well, on this trip,
Pero, ¿por qué no lo hacen las regiones de invertir en esos pueblos? ¿Cuál es el problema?
I'd seen what would happen if that decline fell beyond the point of no return. As sad as it is to see a village like La Estrella lying empty, it is unreasonable to expect that the investment that would be needed to link such places with the modern world could be justified. When I was heading towards Sarnago, I was expecting to find a town that, through technology and modern working practices, was aiming to reverse its fortunes and justify its existence in the modern world. But surrounded by these ruins, I realised that I'd missed the point completely. Marcus's words came back to me.
Because when you come back, you at least keep it alive.
Madre mía. Ah, es una locura. Mira este pueblo cómo se ha convertido. Qué locura, qué locura.
And then I remembered something Jose Marie, one of the driving forces behind the Amigos de Sarnago, had said over lunch the day before. A village isn't abandoned until it's forgotten. Until then, it's just depopulated. Now, Marcos couldn't tell me when the co-working hub would be finished, and I don't think finishing it is the most important thing. You see, what matters is those hacienderas, the coming together, the shared work, the meals around those tables, not just remembering Sarnago,
Me
but
encanta.
continuing to make memories there and looking to a future that, by welcoming people in, stops the past from being forgotten. Depopulation strikes straight to the heart of Spain's identity. And maybe it's the hacienderas, a concept so Spanish that it has no direct English translation, that will stop that identity itself from being abandoned. Now, I plan to explore more of Spain's depopulated regions. I still have a lot to learn, but I do feel that thanks to Sarnago, I now understand that this isn't about numbers or structures. It's about history, culture, and above all, people. Now, I wouldn't have been able to make this video if I couldn't speak Spanish. If you'd like some excellent tips on how to learn, please do check out this interview with my friend James. He's a veteran Spanish teacher. It's up there on my second channel. Thank you so much for watching. Please do consider subscribing to the channel or even becoming a member. It really will help me to make more videos like this. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I look forward.
Muy interesante este video. Había reaccionado en pasado a vídeos que hablaban de cómo la mayoría de España era vacía, pero al verlo así en un vlog, madre mía, fue bastante impactante. Me encantó ese concepto de hacenderas, no conocía esa palabra tampoco, pero fue muy, pero muy bonito. Quiero saber más sobre este tema, entonces si podéis dejar un comentarito explicándomelo mejor, lo agradecería muchísimo. Muchas gracias también por haber visto este video hasta el final. No es algo que todos hacen, entonces muchas gracias. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Chao, chao.